Good afternoon, Meat Suits. Welcome back to Read It and Weep, a podcast about movies and friendship. I'm your host, Alex Falcone, recording, as always, in North Koreatown, Los Angeles. Ezra and Hunter are both away again this week because apparently, in whatever jobs they do, there is unlimited vacation time in August, and so they're gone again. And so we will be watching Avengers Will It Ever End Game next week. We've postponed that one more week. And again, if you want, this time, for real this time, you can watch us watch that movie on Tuesday, August 9th on Twitch, twitch.tv/SpaceCats Peace Turtles. One of the newest partners in the Twitch universe, Space Cats Peace Turtles, will be hosting our stream, and we will be watching Endgame, and you can watch along with us if you have Disney Plus. We'll link that all up. We haven't practiced. I'm sure it'll work flawlessly the first time. That's how streaming goes. But instead of doing that, this week we are bringing you our second and probably last episode in the Accidental series, Still Processing, where we watch a blockbuster, or I watch a blockbuster, and I'm not sure how to feel about it. And so I process it in real time with the help of two of my smart friends. Let me introduce those friends to you. First up, he's at Anthony Lopez, part 2 on Twitter. He's in Southeast Portland. He doesn't sail boats, Penny. He lands on them. It's Anthony Lopez.
Hey, great to be here. Alex, excited to be your wingman on this adventure today.
Oh, yeah, wingman.
As we go,
I don't actually understand how wingmen work. Because there were seemed like too many wings.
You pick up chicks, dude. It's very simple. That's why they go. One, you think the planes would help pick up the chicks alone, right? It's a very impressive.
That's not enough for me. Yeah, I've heard they love planes.
Yeah, you show up to a boat in an F-15. But the thing is, when we're gonna be out there, we're gonna be looking for going against Meg 5s, 5th generation fighters. And you're gonna need all the help we can get. So
the 5G of airplanes. Every year they put out a new one, and we're like, we have all these 4G planes. They work fine. They're not even slowing down. Why do I have to get a 5th generation fighter?
I mean, that's the danger of being enemies with non-named, undistinct country of origin.
We really shouldn't have sold all these weapon systems to unnamed country. That
unnamed
seems like
country that all their soldiers wear nothing but solid black, so you can't see any facial features or distinct
even
details.
A tiny bit of skin anywhere. Yeah. They wear Star Wars costumes. Yeah. Let me bring in our other panelists today. You may remember him from episode 34, The Lightning Thief. And what we like to do with Tim is bring him back every 600 or so episodes.
Yeah.
Just to check on him, see how he's doing. He's a screenwriter, friend of the show, at Tim Dufresne on Twitter. Please welcome back Tim Dufresne.
Hello.
Hey, buddy.
I take the regularity that I'm on this show as a sign of how well I did on that.
I will say there's people we've not invited back.
Okay.
And I definitely have invited you back in the meantime, and just when you couldn't schedule it, and then I got distracted.
And I would take it a lot like, think about the movie we're talking about today, right?
Uh-huh.
You are the legacy sequel of podcast guests, right?
Oh, that's so
There's
true.
A huge gap, and then it's like, all right, we're gonna bring him back. We're gonna hit a lot of the same beats we did the first time.
You were a student on that podcast. Now you're the teacher.
Yeah, exactly. This is what Hollywood's all about now. Legacy sequels.
Such a good point.
That,
It couldn't have been more appropriate. This episode, as always, is brought to you by all of our fabulous meat buddies whose financial contributions via the Patreon keep us doing the show long after it should have been retired. If you'd like to join them and keep this show limping down the tracks, you can go to Metreon.com. And we really appreciate everybody who supports the show. Okay, before we start talking about this movie, though, let's talk a little bit about the news.
Something going on?
There's one thing going on that I know Anthony and I have been texting about. I don't know if you've been following this story, Tim, but you may recall last year, Discovery Channel bought Warner Brothers, which does not, on its face, sound like how that should have worked. I would have thought Discovery was smaller than Warner Brothers, but no. It gobbled it up, and we found out this week what that might mean when they just started canceling shit.
Yeah. I was just reading about this. Batgirl just got canceled, even though it cost $90 million to make.
$90 million? Yeah. Not just that's the projected cost. They have already spent $90 million, and they were like, the best financial decision is to just walk away or fly away in this case.
And we will certainly know more tomorrow. So by the time this comes out, more stuff will be known. But the big they're having a big meeting to talk about sort of plans tomorrow, and that is where this is definitely a sign for a lot of the rumors about what's happening with HBO Max, which is
Yes.
they're taking it out back and pitting 2 slugs in the back of his head is the rumor.
Easily the second most successful streaming service for a long time, maybe top 3 at least. I guess Disney Plus came in, but one of the most successful streaming services. And they were like, "What if this was just naked people who are afraid?"
Yeah. What if it was just
what if we just completely
Island,
eliminated all of the prestige television and moved entirely to unscripted Discovery Channel programming? And look, I should say, I'm not a big fan of comic book movies, and I am a fan of every show about weirdos digging for gold in Alaska. So this seems like it should be perfect for me. And yet, I feel like bummed for this Batgirl movie that I would not have ever watched. But it seems sad.
It's certainly not a great look, especially when they're like backing. Still saying The Flash is coming out, which has, this very problematic lead. And then this movie has like a people in colors in the lead and a people of color directing team. They canceled that. They also announced that they are canceling the Scooby-Doo Halloween movie that was supposed to come out this October.
Which got dogs in the lead. That's an important demographic.
But that also was apparently 95% done. Or somewhere around that.
Say, I'm much less disappointed about the loss of Scoob ! Holiday Hunt.
Yeah, I mean,
or Holiday Haunt. I feel like that was not going to be good. Batgirl had some potential, but
yeah.
Scoob! Holiday Haunt doesn't seem like it was going to be great.
But I mean, still, it's the idea of letting people get this. I mean, this is how nobody sets out to make a bad movie, and even if Scoop's not going to be great, this is still years of people's lives working on something that is essentially now Warner Brothers is like, well, this is going to be a massive tax write-off. Like years of your life for something that is going to be vaulted and going to be a huge tax write-off for the company.
And no matter how bad a movie is, it was at least 30 people's biggest break ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
it's a career death sentence for the people who wrote it and directed it and produced it. Because if you made something that the production team or the studio that made Morbius put out and your thing wasn't good enough to even put out.
Morbius was released twice to Batgirl's 0 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, this is the studio that released, like, the original Suicide Squad and other bad movies. So the fact that
movie made money, though. That movie did make money, even though all the critics hated it. But that movie was a train wreck that they gave to another. Well, when they released it, they had given the cut to the people who did the trailer for it, I guess.
And they cut
and
it.
then they released that, and I didn't like it. A lot of people didn't like it. It did make money, but the thing that blows my mind about this Batgirl thing is how they're like, it's not even worth releasing when their pedigree doesn't seem that extremely.
Well, so one thing that's weird about this, from like doing some research about this, is that there are conflicting stories about it. Like the Variety article insists or says that the studio insists that the decision has nothing to do with quality of the film or commitment to the filmmakers. And then other stories are like, the test screenings were so bad they're doing this. And it is really hard to know which is the truth right now.
Yeah,
but it's also hard to imagine you could make a comic book movie that could test so bad you don't release it, because it seems like it would, like, all of them have made money anyway.
Well, I mean,
the fact that Michael Keaton is in it.
Yes, I mean that feels like enough. You could have my $11.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this was always supposed to be a Max, but an HBO Max movie, but like. I mean, the Michael Keaton thing.
To explain that, sorry, just to not do that as an aside. So supposedly, this was designed to go straight to streaming, which Warner Brothers did with everything, but this was going to not also be in theaters. And supposedly what Discovery Channel says is that they want to do like just theatrical blockbusters, which is so funny that they're like, we hate this part where it's kind of fun in the middle. We want to do only Naked and Afraid and $200 million blockbusters in theaters. We don't want to do anything in between those.
Yeah, and like 90 million is like, there's still a long way to go, right?
Right.
So it's like they spent $90 million to complete a movie, but who knows how many more millions they would have to do in special effects, scoring, editing, post-production stuff, But let me see the saddest
part about this that you mentioned to me, Anthony. Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, Brendan Fraser and Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, amazing. Brendan Fraser as the villain. That actually that's an appealing film now.
Yeah, but Michael Keaton, was paid to come back for Batman, as far as I'm aware, for 3 movies. This, The Flash, and Aquaman. Because The Flash got all fucked up, they have to reshoot all of his. They cut him out of Aquaman, refilming all of the Batman stuff with Ben Affleck, because The Flash is what's supposed to be what reboots the universe and how we get Michael Keaton. So it wouldn't make any sense if he just showed up. I mean, the whole thing is just
so weird,
a mess, and it does definitely feel like the people from Discovery, they bought Warner Brothers, and all Discovery people got put in charge. And it really feels to me like very much sort of like an ego trip. Like, we built Discovery, we did not build HBO, we did not build HBO Max, so we don't give a fuck TV about this. Yeah, and the fact that they're like, it's much cheaper to make unscripted, bad reality shows, and
good ones about gold mining.
Yeah, I get that. That's probably a lot of money in that, but HBO Max, for all the streaming services, like we've definitely talked about it, it's definitely probably my favorite streaming service. It has the best catalog of films, I think.
Yeah,
and then shows like Hacks, Peacemaker, Our Flag Means Death have been some of my favorite shows of the last year. And now that they might still just go to regular HBO. I mean, if they're gonna get saved, that's where they're gonna end up. I saw today that HBO Max has pulled 7 movies that were made for HBO Max, and they are now just unavailable. They are just gone off the internet.
So that's the one
part, real bummer.
That's one part that they said is that they're not going to do shows just HBO Max, but they could be TV shows, which Hacks was originally straight to Max, but then people liked it, and so they did put it on TV sometimes. So I don't know where any of that falls, but I don't know. I have friends who work on that show, and I like it, and I would like very much if Hacks got continued. So that would be a huge bummer. It also seems like HBO Max is where they were testing and they were giving experience to underrepresented communities. Like the straight to streaming is where they were putting like you mentioned with Batgirl, but also Hacks is had 2 female leads and a woman over 30. That's already a weird choice. They're
the most disenfranchised group in the world, women comedians, right?
Well, true. I mean, so also Our Flag Means Death is a show that means a lot to the gay community, and to have those shows and be look, we're bringing all these people in. That's not for us anymore. We're going to get rid of all of those groups. That feels bad. Also, the smallest part about this, not the most important, but this is the thing that I'm also scared of, is they claim that it seems like they're going to get rid of the HBO Max app and just make a tab in Discovery Plus.
Yes.
And I don't know if you guys have ever opened Discovery Plus, but that app is a nightmare.
Really?
Because so many of their shows are awful. When you open it, the hero image is almost always of a show that makes me physically ill to think about. Every time you open Discovery Plus, it's the splashed image across the top is I found a bug in my pimple. And then there's a close-up of pulling bugs out of pimple. Every time it's something absolutely horrifying that I can't. There's a lot of people have sex with ghosts and anyway, everything about it is nuts. And so the idea of going there and then being but I would like to see Game of Thrones, click, 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 and then you go over to the good TV section, just sounds so wild.
Yeah, it definitely seems especially because they're still unrolling HBO Max in new markets, right? People got HBO Max literally last week in some countries, and they're already just gonna trash it.
Great news.
Talked about this a little bit last week after we went off the air because we were talking about Nope, and attached to the Prince of Nope was the trailer for Oppenheimer, Chris Nolan's new movie. We were sort of talking about how weird it is to see a Universal logo in front of a Nolan movie, right?
Yeah.
And Nolan, his house was Warner Brothers for almost 20 years, right? The fact that he made them billions of dollars for a long time, it definitely seemed like they never wanted to lose that relationship. There's 5 directors whose their names are the movie stars of their movie, right? It's Nolan, Spielberg, Tarantino, Jordan Peele now. There's not a lot of people in that place. There's a lot of famous directors, but those ones that you put their name on the poster that gets people's butts in your seats. And Warner's had them locked up. And it's very funny to see this happening now and to be like, oh, did Nolan kind of see this writing on the wall a few years ago, and that's why he left Warner Brothers?
I thought he stormed out because they put his movie on HBO Max. Well, I thought he was mad about streaming existing.
Well, he was mad about the that 1 year deal to put all of their movies
on
streaming first, which is also like something they're not doing anymore. But
I still he was so upset about that I still feel like we should all watch Nolan movies on our phones just to annoy him, because he was so weird about that. Like, come on, man.
What? No, I tend to agree with him. I think something is definitely lost when you watch a movie.
It's a lot of stuff is lost, and I think I should be able to choose how much to get rid of so that it's convenient for me.
I mean, I think,
and people have repeatedly made clear that they do not care about quality. Like the iPod fixed this a long time ago. We were like, do people care about the quality of their audio, or do they care about having it in their pocket? 100% pocket. But I feel like the same thing with movies is like, I think it's better in theaters. Also not going to go very often. HBO Max, going to watch it a lot. So it's my choice to see this or not. Like, I feel like that would be lovely. But if it's his choice that I only see it in his world or not at all, that feels like kind of a jerk move.
I mean, he's not saying I'm only going to release Tenet only in theaters and no other medium ever. That's not what he was saying. You're misconstruing.
I mean, it is kind of what he was saying. Like, that any watching it at home at all is like immoral.
Well, it does hurt the box office.
The money, yeah.
You know, I mean, look at Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
They said explicitly, we're going to give this a theatrical release, and then they released the same day on their streaming service because they're trying to pump up their streaming service.
Yeah.
And, you know, it looks like that is hurting the box office across the board. And I mean, why to go to a movie if you know in a couple of weeks it's going to be for free streaming?
Yeah, the wildest thing about that Scarlett Johansson thing is that they are like still probably going to work together again. Like, you could have massive lawsuits with your bosses and then just keep working with them again. And that does sort of seem like maybe a red flag that this is not a healthy industry for us to be in.
Well, they probably assumed she was going to sue them when they made the decision, and that was factored in the cost.
That's just not a good. We shouldn't be that way.
We talked about. I mean, so Zolvik, the new head of Warner Brothers, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I've never actually heard it said out loud, but
no, I've only read it.
He definitely needs to enter the conversation about. We've talked a lot about Bob Chapek on this show, the new head of Disney, right?
Yeah.
He was the guy who got in the lawsuit and refused to pay Scarlett Johansson. He's the guy making a lot of horrible decisions over at Disney and really being a penny pincher and really like cutting budgets and fucking people over. So I think he has a new competitor in the ring. The new head of Warner Brothers.
The head of Warner Brothers is like famously willing to fire people who have put in a lot of work already, because he did that with CNN Plus a couple months ago, if you remember. Again, a thing I don't really care that much about, but like people had worked to get this network off the ground. 6 days after it launched, he was like, it's cheaper as a tax write-off, and canned the entire existing, like got rid of the whole network, all the shows, all the people who had worked on it. Like, he is famously willing to just cut people and stuff, and
it's also very funny.
Probably good for investors and scary for me. As
we were talking about this last week about how Endgame, the way the Marvel has been like, the MCU was built off the back of like C-list heroes,
right?
Yeah. But they still made it the most successful things. Batgirl, no matter how you feel about her, is definitely at least a B+
I would
hero,
say
right?
strong
Literally
B,
everyone knows who Batgirl is, right?
Well, this is what's so great about the Bat franchise is I don't have to know about it, but if you put Bat in front of it, I assume it's B-list or better. Like, if you Bat Dog, I get it. I understand this is Bat Street Corner. I understand what that Street Corner is. Like,
but
the brand is so good, it can drag everything up to B.
They can't even get their B-list heroes through the finish line.
Crazy.
Is just insane. Did you hear how the directors found out that this was happening? Did you read that news story?
No, but I hate it already.
They one of them is a directing team. They worked on Bad Boys for Life, made the few episodes of Miss Marvel, the 2 best episodes of Miss Marvel. Very, very talented young team of directors. One of them was getting married yesterday.
Oh no.
And they had left to go get married. And then they were like, well, we're going to get back to work on Monday. And they found out pre or during or slightly after the wedding that their movie is literally getting what's the Jerry Lewis movie that was canned forever? The Day the Clown Cried. It's getting The Day the Clown Cried. Yeah, it's getting shoved in a vault, never to be seen. Years of your life. A movie you have finished, spent
possibly longer than this relationship.
Yeah. It's getting
that's a
put in a vault.
Wedding gift.
Yeah. Just what a way to find out.
Oh, that's so awful. Okay, let's wrap up on the news. We got to talk about this movie.
Can I actually say I think this is a very good segue, not the wedding thing, but what we were talking about earlier. The movie that sort of proves Nolan's point better than anything else. Top Gun Maverick, which is the movie we're going to talk about today. But the way that this movie,
you should go see it in the theater.
Well, no, that this movie was Paramount really wanted to send this movie to streaming, right? They fought, and Tom Cruise would not allow it. He just said, it was like, absolutely not. I will leave if you guys send this to streaming. He believed in his vision. He believed that this deserved to be seen on a big screen, and not since James Cameron said, yeah, take my Titanic salary. I'll just take some more back end points. Not since that has a bet on yourself paid off better.
That's true.
Right? Like, and this movie...
you got to know, Tom Cruise is not always 100% with that, because he felt similarly with the new Mummy movie. He backed himself real hard on that one.
Yeah, but he didn't... That's a different thing than this. Right? But this was like... This movie has gone on to not only be the highest grossing movie of his career, it's the biggest movie of the year. It's going to be very, very hard for anything to beat it. It is something that still... I mean, I resaw this movie last night, almost a packed house. At the theater I work at, until we lost it, it was packed screenings, every showing of every day. And I think that, like, the fact that he knew that this movie, I think, is very refreshing. I think, especially when you compare it to a lot of, like, Marvel movies, especially the ones that have come out this year that all look like they were shot in a big room on a volume somewhere. I absolutely understand why this movie has been such a huge success and given people something that is tangible and real and exciting. This is a great example of what a theatrical run can do for a movie and your experience for a movie. This is the best example I can think of.
Just to give you a little preview, I'm also like kind of depressed about it. So let's talk about that when we start the game. For segment 2 of the game this week, it's not really the game. This week it's still processing. This is time to process.
It's the game.
It's still kind of a game. We watched Top Gun Maverick, the 2022 American action drama film directed by Joseph Kosinski, a deep sequel, as previously mentioned, to the 1986 film Top Gun. Fun fact, named because the guns on planes are on the top.
Yeah,
that's not true.
Also, I think you should have to say the 2020. Then 2021, then 2022 movie, Top Gun Maverick.
The movie of all of the 2020s so far, Top Gun Maverick, starring Tom Cruise, Miles Teller, who we know from Whiplash, Jennifer Connelly, John Hamm, obviously from 30 Rock, Glenn Powell, Lewis Pullman, and not starring as much as it should have been, Ed Harris and Val Kilmer. Both got very little screen time, possibly as much as they could afford, but
I don't think it's an affording thing. I think Val gave literally probably all he physically could. I mean, he's the fact that he's in this at all, and I think it's one of the best scenes in the movie. Is like
great.
Pretty
it's an
amazing.
Incredible scene.
Like, I find it very, very touching.
Yeah. And we're not doing so. Obviously, we're going to spoil this because we're going to talk about it, but we're not going to do a beat by beat summary. So I'm going to give you a nano summary just to catch you up. The things you need to know without spoiling anything too bad is that Tom Cruise is still an asshole and a good pilot, and now he has to go back to pilot school, but instead of being a student, he's now the teacher, and also he has to kiss a human woman in a very convincing real human kiss with mouths and stuff. Tom Cruise's favorite thing to do in movies. Tom Cruise is a very good actor, I think, but cannot convincingly look like he's enjoying kissing a woman, is my experience. And he only does it once. So there's an almost kiss, and then he was like, no, definitely not. And then at the end of the movie, he's like, fine, I have to kiss her one time.
I mean, especially so. I think this movie, of all the legacy sequels that have been made over the last 10 years, I definitely think this is the best. And one of the reasons why I think it's a very good legacy sequel is if it avoids a lot of the pitfalls, or does those pitfalls in much smarter ways. Most legacy sequels are filled with like, okay, so it's basically going to be the same movie as the original, but with the younger generation, and it's going to have just a shit ton of callbacks, shit ton of references that serve really no purpose. But what I really like about this movie is that it does the same thing, but all of the callbacks, all of the references to the original are there to be juxtaposed with the original to show you how this man has changed in the 20, 30 years, right? So a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people make fun of the kind of the sex scene, as it were, or the sort of like the kissing in this movie. But the thing I love about it is if you rewatch the original has a very, very iconic sex scene in which Tom Cruise shoves his tongue into this woman's lungs. Like you can see,
I forgot about that.
Because it's all in silhouette. And you can just see Tom Cruise's mouth literally cleaning the inside of this woman's lungs. And it's
there are a few things that are more fun to do and less fun to describe than kissing.
Yeah.
There is not you cannot describe a kiss in a way that doesn't horrify me, but I don't mind doing it.
Yeah, just wet flesh smacking, you know?
But just put your eat hole on her eat hole and then rub it about.
But I love.
Aren't you writing a erotica novel soon, Alex?
I've been working on an erotica for a long time, and famously not doing the erotica part myself. Can't do it.
Only
Gross.
call them eat holes. You have to promise me at least once you will call a mouth an eat hole. She pit her eat hole.
I mean, I think that's actually a good way to write an erotica. Is just like with everything described as like clinically as possible, or just as gross as you possibly could.
The clinical term, eat hole. But my point I was trying to make...
Look, I'm not a doctor. I'm a pilot.
Was in this movie,
not a pilot.
The way that, like, if you juxtapose the two sex scenes, it shows like this level of maturity that the thing the movie focuses on is like the conversation afterwards.
Yeah.
As like this very intimate moment. And I think that like the scene by itself in a vacuum is all right. But if you juxtapose it with the original and what it was used for there and what this is used for here, I think it's just such smart screenwriting that this movie is filled with. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I know we'll get into the military propaganda.
We're going to get there.
We're going to get there. I'm a massive leftist. I fucking hate the military. I hate the armed forces. I think if they do one good thing, make one good piece of art, I'll be like, all right, at least you guys made this. With all the other horrible shit you did, at least Top Gun Maverick was made.
Yeah. So that's the exact decision-making process that I'm trying to process today, is like, do I feel that same way? And my general feeling is that no, I was too overwhelmed by the dislike of what was happening on it. That like, I felt like if this was not a real world, if like, this was an entirely made up thing, if this was a video game even, I'd be like, what a fun thing. The movie is I think a well-written, well done, like almost all the pieces of it are good. I have a few nits that I'm going to pick because that's fun for me. But like generally a very good movie if we lived in a vacuum. And unfortunately we don't. And I was not able to suspend, not disbelief, but like distaste. I couldn't suspend my distaste for most of the movie. Because it is so disgusting what they're actually doing with all of this. But let's come back to that, dwell on the positives for a little bit longer. I enjoy a lot of those decisions you're talking about. I think the way they updated is smart. I think it still does a little bit of like, it still does push a few callbacks in a way that I don't entirely believe. The fact that Goose's son plays the same song that Goose played in the same way that he played it in a bar when Goose's son would have been much too young to be hanging out with him in bars at the time and to have learned that.
He is there in the original. He's in the bar with them hanging out as they play the song. But
how old is he?
Because he's like 6 or 7, something like that.
Yeah, I just feel like he's not retaining that knowledge from the time he saw his dad do it once when he was 6. Also, I mean, the idea that
you don't think room full of
20-year-olds, the room full of 20-year-olds all know all of the words to Great Balls of Fire is just like a little bit hard for me to get behind.
Yeah. But I mean, you don't think
also their favorite songs in the jukebox are 80s songs. Like these are all kids that were born in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, but my favorite song is Danger Zone. Unless the only way, this is a point my wife pointed out, he probably not only saw that thing when his dad was young, but he also probably saw Top Gun. So he probably remembers all that stuff from watching the movie as a kid.
But you don't think he would remember literally the last time he saw his dad alive? Like the last memory he has of his father.
Wow, Dad was playing a song, but would he remember the words? I don't buy it.
But you're nitpicking Alex's nitpick.
Look, this is a fun thing for me. Well, Tim, this is just for you then. No one else is going to care about this, but I hate it. I hate when a movie shows people playing pool and they do a series of illegal shots.
Yeah, I hear that.
No one else cares, but there's a combo shot that is like not in the game. Not in any game is that a legal shot you've just done. Well,
people are really ignorant of the rules of 8-ball, I find. And that's the most common game people play. But also, the thing that bugs me more, even though I love it, is when somebody plays pool and every single shot they do is a trick shot.
Yeah, right. That's exactly. Same thing. You
guys
I set up on a bar pool table so you could do a lot of a lot of caroms. You could do a lot of hopping. Yeah. Are you playing 8-ball? If you're playing 8-ball and you're doing a lot of 3-ball bank combo shots, you are playing wrong.
But I mean, that is kind of the essence of films, right? I'm sure if you got a actual fighter pilot or an actual Navy SEAL to talk to you about any movie that gets made, they would be like, yeah, this is 1% of 1% of what we do, and it's heightened up to a 10.
Yeah.
And that is presented as though that's their everyday, when in reality, I'm mostly making PowerPoints.
Right.
And I'm mostly giving budget talks, and my life is
a lot of meetings.
Very, not nearly as exciting as some of this really hyped up stuff. That's the nature of all film.
That's a good. That is a good point. It is more damaging, I think, when you make it seem like being a Navy SEAL is super fun than when you make pool seem like it's hard, but you're good at it.
Well, it's everything. Everything in a film is designed to be as visually entertaining as possible. And the outcome of that is a lot of times we have scenes and events and things that don't quite match up to reality. But because it's the same across the board, we just accept it. And the people who get really confused by it tend to be children, but they grow up eventually. So
So this is almost a nitpick. It's actually like more of a real concern, but it's so minor compared to what we're going to talk about. But I do think Jon Hamm is too nice. I had a hard time buying Jon Hamm
the
being
guy
angry.
Who's the massive asshole in this movie?
Yeah, I just did not buy him as the massive asshole. The whole time I was like, but he seems so charming. You don't really believe this, John. That's how I felt.
Can I tell you?
He was the only person that I felt was slightly miscast, was just like, John is like, he's just too friendly for this mean military boss.
I mean, kind of.
You don't think, Anthony, you didn't think that? I'm surprised.
No, I mean, I think he's pretty good in the role. I think everyone is really cast in this sort of small roles, and as the asshole, the bureaucracy of this movie, right? Well, and like to kind of step back and kind of get how I sort of get past the sort of jingoistic rah go.
Well, I want to talk about that later. I want to get into that later.
But let's
focus on the movie thing.
I do want to talk about the movie thing and why I think this movie, what works so well for this movie, and what I think makes this movie so good. Is that this movie is clearly not about pilots, right? This is a movie about Tom Cruise and his place in Hollywood and the types of movies he makes. Right? I mean, this isn't even like a stretch.
Okay. This is good. Tell me more.
This is literally the subtext of this movie, what this movie is about. Okay, so the opening sequence is Tom Cruise, Maverick, he has not gone up in his career. He is still doing the same thing he has done forever, right? And in Tom Cruise's case, being an action star. He hasn't gone on to write movies. He hasn't gone on to direct movies. He produces movies, but he makes his movies that he makes. He is an actor and an action guy, and that's what he makes, right? And the whole opening sequence of this movie is about him pushing what human beings can do in planes or in movies, right, to the limit. And a bureaucrat comes up and literally tells him, we are cutting you. You are no longer relevant. We're going to have computers do what you do, and we will not ever need you again. All right? And he gets into this whole scene with Ed Harris's character in The Office when they're literally it's a scene, you can imagine it in a Hollywood boardroom, him talking to a head of a studio, and it would be the exact same scene. And the scene ends with him saying, you're irrelevant. We don't need you anymore. You're going to go away. And Tom Cruise looks at him and says, that may be true, but not today. right?
Yeah.
And then the rest of this movie.
So
that
I
is
like
not only
I like this. I do feel like it's weird when and the thing we're going to talk about later, which is like in the context of the movie, it's like we're going to replace you fighter pilots with drones, and his point is like, I still want to do killing, but with that human touch.
It's not the drone, it's the pilot. We all know this, right?
But which also isn't okay. But anyway, but the one thing about that, I like that analysis. I think it's good, and I think Tom Cruise makes a compelling case for himself in this. This is also the plot of a lot of movies with older people in them, where like 2 James Bonds ago, the whole point of the movie was like, is James Bond still relevant in 2018 or whatever? And the answer to that was like, their point was yes, and the answer, I think, watching it was no. And this makes a better case that the answer is yes, because because like you're speaking my language with a lot of these things. Like, I hate computer generated stuff in movies. It takes me out. It drives me crazy. And you can feel the difference when he's in a $500 million war machine for real. Like it feels better. It's more exciting. I like that Tom Cruise is probably going to die doing a stunt. I think that's cool to watch. Like, he cares that much for us, just like in the movie where he's like willing to go to 10.2 Mach, which might die, like just to make it more exciting. I like all of that. I do think I've seen that done a lot of times, but just like you were saying with other deep sequels, this one like pulls it off in a way that other movies don't, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I think this movie is, like I said, it's very, very smart in the fact that it's being a legacy sequel. But I do think that that's a big part of what makes this movie work so well for me, and why I do think it's actually so good. So I think Tom Cruise does recognize and truly resonate with what this message is, and the way he sees what his place in Hollywood and his legacy is, right?
Yes.
And he's really put that on the screen in an interesting way. I also I really like the way, I'm just going to kind of gush about a few things besides sort of just the amazing action, the amazing cinematography and stuff. I really like the way that like Tom Cruise is a lot more vulnerable in this than he is in, like, let's say something like the Mission Impossible movies, and like Ethan Hunt's whole thing is like he can literally do anything. He's a perfect, competent man. He's the ultimate short king, right?
Yeah,
he's 5'1" and he'll fucking fuck anyone up.
Ethan Hunt, ultimate short king.
Yeah, but in this movie, I like the fact that like he cries a lot. There's like multiple scenes of him crying. There's a great gag about that you referenced earlier about when he goes on a boat and they're like, you don't know how to work a boat. You've been in the Navy for 30 years. And he's like, no, I don't know how boats work. All right.
Yeah.
And I love that is such a clever joke to realize and to capitalize on. And then to like show like a vulnerability in this character, that he's not like great at everything. He's great at one specific thing. So it is like, I really like the way he plays a very different character than what we get with like the Ethan Hunts normally in this movie.
I agree with that.
Even though there's a lot of the same stuff. I think all that stuff is great.
Look, I think across the board, and you've helped a lot with this. I do think Tom Cruise is very good, and I think he's done some. I think where he uses his money is not good, that he's given most of it to cults and to imprison young actresses. But I do think that he's a very good actor, and he is very enjoyable on screen, and he still can totally pull off a shirtless football scene. Like the dude's got it. You're right. The cruise missile doesn't miss. I think it's awesome. He's a short king. You got me on that. Yeah. I will also say a great thing about watching this movie during the COVID era is if you wear a mask that goes over both your ears and you take off one of the ears to eat popcorn, you look just like he does when he takes off half of his mask to talk into the radio while he's a fighter pilot. So you get to feel like you're a pilot. It's a very fun game.
Yeah, I also, in my seat, I go...
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
When before he created his own production studio, he was told you can't, to what you're talking about, he was told you can't do these action scenes, you can't do these stunts yourself. It's too expensive for us to pay the insurance for you because you're a huge star. And he only created his own production company because he was willing to pay the insurance premiums for himself to do his own stunts.
Oh, interesting.
And when he broke his ankle on the last Mission Impossible movie, jumping from a building. The scene where he jumps and broke his ankle is the shot they used, and they had to shut down production for weeks so that he could heal his broken ankle. This guy's almost 60 years old, or might even be 60. I mean, action god. What?
Yeah. And Alex, did you see the
amazing?
He 62. He is exactly 60. Wow, Tim.
Yeah.
He turned 60 3 weeks ago.
But anybody else would have just been like, okay, I guess I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
This guy funds his own. This guy says no, and it's you hear stories about him being like, we have the stunt coordinator, and I told him this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna climb this building, this sheer building, and the stunt coordinator says you can't do that. It's too dangerous. And he's like, okay, well, you're fired. I'm going to go find a stunt coordinator who will let me do this. And then he does it for the movie. And you could argue about whether or not that's a good idea.
Yeah, it makes me feel a little queasy when you say it that way.
Sure. But I mean, the guy, it would be worse if he was putting somebody else's life in danger. But the fact that he's willing to do it, I mean.
Yeah. Well, and you see from like behind the scenes stuff, the way he talks to the crew, it isn't with like a patronizing way. It isn't with like an egotistical way. It is with a like, we are going to do something incredibly dangerous, incredibly tough. You are the best of the best. And like the way he is like so detail oriented. I mean, he is literally going to space with a lunatic director named Doug Liman, who's famous for having messy productions. But like he is planning to film something in space soon, right? I mean, but did you see your screening the introduction video from Tom Cruise?
No.
Right before this movie, you didn't get that?
No. So that what did he say?
Well, it was in front of most screenings. Both screenings I saw had this, and at my theater we had it.
So my favorite theater to go to is this one in Koreatown where it's subtitled in Korean, and a lot of the trailers are Korean, both because it's a nice theater, it's close to me, and also because it is almost always empty. So you said yours were like packed screenings. I intentionally found a screening where I was one of 4 people in the theater because I feel safe that way, and I have a good time when I can pick my seat easily. So anyway, I had a different set of. I'm sure I saw several movie trailers you did not see because they were entirely in Korean. Anyway, continue, please.
Every other screening of Top Gun, if you went to go see it, it opens with a little Tom Cruise in a chair talking to the audience. And he basically says like, hey, thank you guys so much for coming back to the movies. We made this for you, right? We're doing this for your entertainment. And he thanks you guys, thanks everyone. And like with anyone else, that would sound so like hollow and empty and like just something you have to say. But when you look at the things that Tom Cruise is actually doing and putting himself through, and the way he wants the spectacle to be there, he wants people to be like amazed by what they're seeing and like be remembered, like remember what film and a theatrical experience can be like. It feels earnest. It may be misguided, it may be dumb, it may be like a little like very vain on top of that, but I genuinely do believe that when he is like, I'm gonna pilot a helicopter and I'm going to fly through this thing for Mission Impossible, or I'm actually going to be in the back of these planes for this movie. He really does think we need to give people a show. People are going to spend their hard-earned money to see this, and we need to give them something, which I think, like I said, that may be misguided, but you see so many movies in which you feel no one on set thinks about that or gives a shit. Like so many movies you see are like, look, they're fucking pigs. They're going to love this shit, all right? It doesn't matter.
Slap it up, you sloppy fuckers.
Give the animals their fucking slop, right?
Yeah.
You see, you can feel that from so much, but you don't get that with Cruise Productions, right? I think that is like, something's commendable about that.
Okay, so I think we've done a good job of gushing now. I want one medium thing, and then we're going to talk about my issue, and that Tim is going to be able to participate more in because he knows more about this than he knows about the movie he hasn't seen. But the one question I have for you, Anthony, the mission that this is all centered around, the impossible mission, if you will, the trench run is just Star Wars trench run.
Yes,
like the mission is almost like you have to run through a narrow canyon, hit a ventilation shaft, and then pull up really hard.
Yeah.
And the bad guys who are wearing all black helmets in their little TIE fighters, also the only way you can pull it off is if your instruments fail, is to trust your instincts. Like, they just wrote Star Wars with real planes, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not the only one who noticed that was just Star Wars-y.
Yes, it's everyone noticed it. It's just the trench run. But what I love about it is I think that
the bad guys from the generic country definitely look a lot like Darth Vader's TIE fighter minions.
Oh yeah,
too.
for sure.
Like, it's
the
so
black
Star Wars-y.
Yeah, I mean it is very very Star Warsy, but I think that's again like kind of purposeful because what I really love about the whole final act of this movie, like I think this movie is really really good, but I think from the beginning of the mission to the end, it is a nonstop roller coaster ride, unlike any movie I have seen in years. It's just it's like Mad Max Fury Road, kind of that way. It just like once the real shit starts, it just does not stop, and it constantly keeps being more and more inventive. But I really like the way they really make it's a very simple idea, but they really drive it home. You really understand every single part of what they are doing, and then the movie then swerves on you because that's only like 3 minutes long, and then you get like another 20 minutes of shit going wrong, right? But I think that,
that's
like,
true.
By making it the trench run, something everyone knows, it really helps with the shorthand of understanding the geography of what they're doing. It allows, like, I think my favorite thing before the end is when Tom Cruise, who apparently it's very easy just to be like, hey, I'm just gonna get in this plane and do this thing. Is that okay?
Well, I
Like,
mean,
no
that's
one
an
stops him.
important lesson of like if you're at a place of business and there's a lot going on and you just move confidently, people will not question you.
Yeah, it's not who's gonna
if you
let
just
you, it's
jog,
who's gonna stop
especially if
you,
you're jogging,
right?
people are gonna be like, oh yeah, he probably works here.
Yeah. But like that sequence when he proves to them that it's possible is so fucking hype. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
But then the final thing is basically the trench run with a huge pullout at the end.
Yeah.
And it's just it's so well done. It's so like unlike anything I've seen in a while. It's great.
So now I want to talk about the military, you supposed leftist. So I agree with you. Incredible film. What a great time. If we didn't live on Earth, I would totally feel that. But I do feel like when he crashes a plane to demonstrate the mission, that one plane could have ended homelessness in a major city. And like and the fact that this is so carefully coordinated to show only things that are positive for them. They're not, they're never in an F-35 strike fighter at any part in this because it's $1 trillion debacle. They're like, oh, don't worry about that. We only use the one that is cool and we know is profitable. Like, you guys love this plane, we'll use this plane. Like, all of the stuff, the way the military has carefully crafted this movie to be like an ad for the military really bothers me. And I can't help but feeling watching this that like they took our money to go kill people, and then they took more of our money to make an advertisement for how much fun it is to kill people, and then they charged us money to watch that ad. It feels a little dystopian. It feels a little gross watching an ad, having to pay for an ad for a thing that I already paid for and wish I didn't have to. Like, I mean, so we've also mentioned some other things that are especially egregious in this. I think like they are fighting a country that never gets a name, where they cover every inch of skin so you can't see them or make any judgments about all of them. But this supposed country is big enough to have an air force and a uranium enrichment program. So this strike, whatever what they're doing, definitely illegal. We're doing international crimes in this movie. Also, we don't see anybody at all when they die. They just disappear into puffs of smoke, so we don't have to worry about any of those deaths. But then we see the Americans high-fiving and bragging over who's done more killing in their lives so far. Like, the high five at the end is supposed to be like this most triumphant part where they're like, I have 2 kills now. I have 5. Suck it.
Well, to be fair, they're talking about shooting down planes. This movie makes a very big point that you always see all the pilots eject and get parachuted
The bad
down.
pilots?
Yes.
Certainly not in the helicopter. The bad helicopter blows the fuck up.
Well, the bad helicopter gets blown up, yes. But all the other pilots...
do that helicopter. Everybody in a helicopter.
Hey, dude, already in a fucking helicopter. You're probably going to die anyway, dude.
Helicopters are fucked up, man.
Helicopters are very, very dangerous.
I believe if I remember correctly, Tim, your father has been in a Navy helicopter crash before.
No, my grandpa was.
Your grandpa was.
And he survived it. He jumped out before everybody else.
Yeah. Helicopters are like elevators, right? If you jump right before the ending, you're okay.
Oh, that probably does work. Yeah. Both Tim and I's dads were in the Navy, which I think is relevant to this when we are a little bit anti-military, if that's where you're going to go as well. Also, the fact that like the motto of the movie of his training in the military is just don't think about it. Like, don't think. You're thinking. You shouldn't be thinking. Just go do the thing. Just go execute the mission. Don't think. Is like really disgusting and dystopian to me. And I wish, I don't know if I wish. I cannot get rid of all of that while I'm watching it. I thought I might be able to. There were parts when they were playing football with 2 footballs and they were all shirtless on the beach. I was like, hey, what a good time. I'm feeling no bad things about this. And I don't think football is okay. But this was just like the way they hid the people, the nameless enemy who's they're gonna do this thing that'll kill everybody in the world, so we obviously have to, and then like just the constant military propaganda for 2 hours. And the one downside to my cool Koreatown theater is that when you walk out the door of the theater, right across the street at 12 o'clock is a military recruitment station for the Marines. It feels dystopian and gross.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's
a cool
how I
movie
feel.
though. Yeah, I mean, no, I agree with all those things. I mean, I think that this kind of goes with the, my sort of like talking about us and the sort of like the what it's like to be an American, right? I think that there's a lot of things that are gross. There's a lot of things that we actively participate in, right? And I think that like we all have to draw a line somewhere, and I absolutely get it if like this movie is too far for you. To me, I was able to abstract enough, and like to me, this movie is it's very much like watching a military anime, right? This movie's very anime, right? It's just
I agree. And if it had been animated, I think I would have felt nothing.
And I think that,
but so okay, I think I totally agree with that. But I also think with that, given how fucked up everything is, if something rises to the level of giving me heartburn while I'm watching it as an entertainment thing, I mean, I could have put the same money into seeing Marcel the Shell with shoes on and not had to be part of that the same way. Like, I feel if you can get to the part where it feels dystopian in a world where almost everything feels dystopian all the time, and this is still notably
coming from
dystopian.
A guy who's been to a SpaceX launch, right? Talking to me about shit that feels dystopian and how like this movie is bad,
more
but like
than that. There is a future human potential to space that there is not with how fun it is to kill people in wars.
Yeah, kill people mining asteroids. It's just as good. It's better, right?
I think there's more steps there. I do think. Okay, Tim, here's what I want to talk to you about, though, because I know you've been thinking about this a lot. What does it take? Like, what is the level that the military is involved in something like this? This is not a thing that the Navy was just like, oh, you want to make a movie about us? Dope. We'll come see it.
So, like I said, I haven't seen the movie. I'd probably be better to analyze something like Avengers Endgame, because that's more what the thing I'm writing is about.
Which is what we're talking about next week. So I do want you to talk about that a little too.
Yeah, sure.
Or even just talk about it now. That would work.
Sure. But let me ask you some questions. So they use fighter planes in this movie, I assume.
Yes, a lot of them. Yep.
And there's probably an aircraft carrier.
Yep.
Well, imagine what it would cost to rent an aircraft carrier for a film or those planes, you know?
What is an aircraft carrier? It's like 10,000 employees on it at a given time.
I don't know, man. It's a lot. But
so I'm going to guess it's expensive. Yeah.
The point I'm getting to is that military equipment and locations are prohibitively expensive for even the most successful film studio. So in order to make any movies that are about using real military equipment, you pretty much need to partner up with the DoD to do it. And if you partner up with the DoD, they pretty much can dictate to you their terms. And if you violate their terms and say, no, my script, my story, they say, okay, well, good luck, and they send you on your way. That famously happened with Platoon, which is a film about the Vietnam War, and the DoD was going to help them with it, but they couldn't get script clearance. They couldn't get they didn't approve of the script because the Pentagon said this is too anti-Vietnam. This is portraying American service members in an too unflattering of a light, and so they wouldn't lend their help. They wouldn't lend their equipment, and they're under no obligation to do so.
Sure.
And so, Oliver Stone got to make Platoon the way he wanted, but not with the help of the Department of Defense.
I feel like if you were like, "Can I use your apartment to make a movie about what a piece of shit you are?" I'd be like,
right.
I don't feel like I'm going to let you use my bedroom for that. I get that. Even if, as is the case with Platoon, I had been that big of a piece of shit.
Totally.
Even maybe more so if it's accurate.
Yeah, totally. So, Vietnam was probably the most unpopular war America's ever fought. So if there was ever a time that the Pentagon was going to be okay with a little bit of criticism, it would have been then. But they're not. They're not open to those kinds of criticisms.
Not big on feedback.
Yeah. The whole reason. It's funny that this also happened with the first Avengers movie, right? So the first one, the military was not happy with the way they were shown in the script. So they pulled funding and support from the first Avengers. But after the Avengers became this huge blockbuster thing, right? They started to become like, oh, well, we understand the reach is so much bigger. So they were able to forgive the fact that these superheroes were the heroes and not people.
For the Joss Whedon Avengers
the Joss
movie?
Whedon one. They didn't I believe it was the helicarriers that they wanted to use because they were so unrealistic to what the military has. The military wanted a more realistic one. So they pulled support for the first one. But they very quickly, by the time we get to Miss Marvel, which is straight up an ad for the Air Force, right?
Well, I was going to talk about Captain Marvel there was actually a for Captain Marvel and for X-Men First Class, they had a dual promotional video that was designed to try and get new recruits. It was a recruiting video that edited shots of the movie, scenes from the movie with, military personnel and the things that they do. So, this relationship is between Hollywood and the DoD has been well documented for over 100 years of different projects that are used to facilitate their mutual ends. The movie wants to look as good as it can, as authentic as it can, for as least amount of money. And the Pentagon and the DoD wants to increase recruitment and servicemen retention and, be public relations for both Americans and abroad to put forth this idea that Americans are the good guys.
Yeah.
And when you see an American soldier, don't think of them as the bad guy.
I Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime, right?
Oh,
that is made in conjunction with the CIA. The CIA gives them a bunch of access so that they can help rehabilitate their image, right?
Right.
I mean, just the fact that there is a person in the Pentagon who is in charge of image feels dystopian to me. The fact that there's the PR for the military just seems so gross.
Alex, you use the word dystopian a lot, and I'm wondering what the opposite of it is utopian, but there's no such thing as utopia. So this is just the world, and it is the way the world has been forever.
And I hate it.
Have you guys heard? Yeah. I mean, Alex.
I just hope I get on a word. I get excited about the word. Yeah.
Welcome. I'm glad you're finally here.
You're more recruiting for the Navy than you are for the Resistance today.
Hey, fuck you, buddy. All right. I will not stand for so much slander. All right. Here's call my credentials into question. You fucking prick.
Here's another one for you, Alex. You'll love is the technical advisor on this film that you're talking about, Top Gun Maverick, became a fighter pilot as a direct result of seeing the first Top Gun.
Well, this is what I've felt with it. Like, it's I don't like that this exists, that the military does this, that they have this office, that they participate in this, and that Hollywood is part of it. That's bad, but it hurts the most when the movie is good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care with Jack Ryan because no one is joining the CIA because of that piece of shit Amazon show. Like,
they could be.
They could be. Yeah. I'm sure somebody is.
But you're not winning as many people into the military with Ms. Marvel. But this movie, and the first one, make flying planes look hella fun. And it makes
flying planes not
dogfighting
hella fun? I mean, that's my thing. Like, it's.
I mean, mostly for me, it seems it's actually quite unpleasant for me. I get motion sick, but I do feel like this movie makes it seem really fun to shoot down people whose faces you can't see, and that is a bother. And
that goes that I'm glad you bring that up because it's the for me the thing that I really I don't have a problem with portraying American service members in a positive light. I have a problem with only portraying them in a positive light across every possible film that Hollywood or anyone else could ever make, because I don't like any message to be that ubiquitous. I don't like anything to be that homogenized. I think that the diversity of point of view and perspective is good for culture, right?
Yes.
But if the deal is, if you want to make a movie that has this equipment, you have to show us in a positive light, or else we're not going to give you access to it. I think that's a fair deal. I understand why the DoD wants to portray themselves in the most positive light possible. I get that. I get that they see it as a national security interest. I think all of that is fair. The issue that I run into for me, and the thing I'm afraid of culturally, is that whenever violence is done in film, it's typically either done in a ultra-violent, extremely graphic, cartoonish way, like in Kill Bill, which is great, or it's done in a totally bloodless way, as in the Marvel films, where it's PG or PG-13. So,
this was PG-13, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're seeing acts of violence and acts of state-sanctioned violence that's not at all muddied or complicated by the fact that there is a human being experiencing pain or not coming home to their family.
Yeah.
And again, that's okay if it's 1 out of 10 movies, 2 out of 10 movies. But when 99% of the movies that we are showing to people all contain the same message that violence doesn't hurt, that's something that I have a problem with. And, it first occurred to me when I watched the Narnia 2 movie. This guy impales this bad guy with a sword, and he pulls his sword out, and there's no blood. There's not one trace of blood on the silver, pristine sword. Yeah. And I remember thinking, this guy, this prince, is clean. He's as clean as his sword, even though he just killed somebody. And the message is, he's not going to be racked with guilt. He's not going to have nightmares about this moment. He's okay. He's justified. And that justification cleans the sword as he impales this guy. And that's the problem I have with it, where I've the thing I glom onto is the way that we have John Wick going around killing people like it's absolutely nothing, which I love those movies, but the bloodlessness, the relative bloodlessness of it, that's what kind of horrifies me, not on a political level, but just on a cultural level.
I think that's such a good point. And I think combining the fact that it's harmless, it seems harmless and there's no repercussions for the people, and it seems like if you want to live in a video game, join the military. That together feels like dangerous to me societally, and it feels like the guy who was involved with this because he watched that first movie. Like, that's not a bad ending for him, all things considered. I'm kind of glad he went full circle. Yeah. There are other people who joined because of this that don't have as happy of an ending. That have were exposed to burn pits and have long-term health problems because of it, like that certainly are going to be in therapy forever. Are they going to have trouble with the VA forever,
or more to the point, should be in therapy forever, won't and will suffer, and their family will suffer as a result of that, because it's not like everybody gets the help they always need.
That gets to kind of like my feelings on it, which is like, I think that relative to the atrocities and the industrialized sort of like school to military pipeline and the helplessness and all the things that the military does, between rapid spending, covering up a rampant abuse, horrible uses of state power across the board, all of that stuff to me is so much worse than like a movie that puts them in a good light, right? Like, I think that the movie to me is like a symptom that I can easily kind of just enjoy and forgive, because the actual atrocities are happening somewhere else. And I think that if this movie, like I said, I have all the same complicated feelings you do, right? It really sucks that I like this movie so much, but I can sort of justify it to myself when I look at, like, when you look at a lot of other military propaganda movies that especially portray like Middle Eastern people a certain way, or portray whatever the enemy is a certain way. So many military movies go out of the way to push harmful stereotypes, really shitty ideology about different countries and the way the villains work. But I mean, also at the same time, if you step back and look at just American movies in general, right? Most movie screenwriters and directors are rich millionaires who are invested in keeping the system how it is, right? That's why most movies have like the bad guys who might have a valid point, but they have to go so far, and at the end of the day, the state is still usually the hero, right? Like, or a hero within the state is going to change it and make things better, right? Like, there's all types of problems with our media, and I think that for, like, to me, like, this movie can have problems, but I can still like enjoy it for what it is, and then like kind of like just be like, at least this was like a very refreshing, unique thing that I can be like, yeah, the military branch and military spending are out of control, and it's horrible the things they do, but like I said, we got one good movie out of it. That is at least one good thing they made, compared to like that shitty bad plane you mentioned, or the V-22 Osprey, which costs like 20 times this movie and it's killed dozens of crews, you know?
Yeah.
But there's also
I was going to say, just randomly speaking about people showing you in view lights, have you guys you guys know what the rules for showing iPhones in movies is?
No.
A villain cannot use an iPhone.
Oh, that's funny.
This is true. Funny. Apple will give you phones to use in your movie, use in your show, but a villain cannot use an iPhone.
That makes much sense, because that's why when Thanos called his minions in, they blurred it. Because he was using an iPhone.
Yeah. Or like the way I learned about this was in Knives Out. They all use iPhones except for Chris Evans' character.
Oh, that was a giveaway.
Oh, man, he was a
green bubble, so you knew he did it.
And that was, Rian Johnson said, like, if you know the way this works, you will know he's the villain.
Oh,
because
that's funny.
Apple's rules are you can use our phones, but the bad guys cannot use iPhones.
But all you need to do is open like the Wall Street Journal, and you'll see like all the villains are using iPhones all the time.
Oh,
that's
for sure.
Funny. I had no idea.
My only thing that I can add to that is that when I was on the set of Portlandia towards the end, they were like at one point handing out phones for everybody to hold, and the prop guy was like, "Oh yeah, you just tell them you're making a TV show, and you'll just get a box of 200 iPhones to just make sure you're always holding an iPhone forever. That it will be they're so fast and so easy to deal with to get you phones that it doesn't even make sense to use another phone in your movie, because you just you start production and there's a box of phones waiting already. It'll just always be ready."
Yeah.
You get a lot of iPhones.
That's crazy.
We have to start wrapping up on this. We are going into Avengers Endgame next week, Tim. What else am I looking for in Endgame? What am I watching for? What are the things that where the military has its footprints most clearly?
Well, I mean, with Endgame, I don't think that they partnered with the DoD for Endgame, because I don't think there's any. I don't think they use any military equipment. It's all sci-fi stuff. So more you're looking for visual symbols, things like Captain America and his stars and stripes. You're looking at what is the language of the film saying? Like, how are the bad guys portrayed? How are the good guys portrayed? Usually you see the good guys using a primary colors palette. They're dressed in brighter colors and they look more heroic, and the bad guys are all just kind of like, you've seen it, they're all gray and they're all kind of faceless monsters. For me, I think a similar moment to you in watching this movie when I watched Endgame, because I loved it. On one hand, I loved a lot about it, but on the other hand, I was like, oh, this is just like a war movie at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've already seen it.
Yeah, I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's
But I don't
one...
as you know, I don't like comic books at all. Comic book movies at all.
Sure. Well, there's one casualty of war on the good guys' side in the battle. There's another one earlier in the film. But in the battle, there's one casualty of war. And he is given the dignity of a recognition of his sacrifice. He's given a hero's farewell. He's given everything you would ever want if you were to die for a greater cause, right? And he's the only one who dies. Everybody else is protected by plot armor. Nobody dies in the last conflict, and except for him. And he's given as much, he's basically sainted at the end. And the thing that I noticed about that is that if you apply that to the military, they're basically saying, fight for us. It'll be for a good cause. Hurting the bad guys will not hurt you psychologically at all. It'll be exciting. It'll be fun. It'll be honorable. And you probably won't die, but on the very off outside chance that you do, you will be given a hero's farewell for the ages. And that is kind of the meta message of how we look at war in general in the United States. And it would have been a better film, in my opinion, if more characters that you liked would have died, to show you really the cost of war in battle. You
can't sell toys for dead people, though, can you?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Scarlett Johansson what her
her toy
that's
deal
another
is.
thing is they put out her movie after her character was already dead. I mean,
so what you're saying is, to come back to what we talked about earlier, Hollywood has done Scarlett Jo a little wrong.
Oh, absolutely. They should have done maybe not a trilogy, but like a one-off for her. And it should have been like John Wick. It should have been a straight up spy movie, rated R, do it right. Instead, they made a less interesting, typical Marvel movie. I mean, I didn't mind that movie as much, but what I wanted was Scarlett Johansson to do her crotch judo on everybody and headshot motherfuckers in the face. That's what I wanted.
It's hard to feel bad for Scarlett Johansson, Joe, because she loves to like say wildly tone deaf things, and she's like married to Colin Jost, which is like the worst war crime that the military has ever done.
This is a very good point.
Be married to that.
ScarJo has also done herself dirty. That's a good point. All right, well, we're gonna wrap now. We'll talk more about this next week. We're set up perfectly for Avengers Endgame. Just a quick reminder that you can watch that movie if you're so inclined at 4 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday. What did we say? It was the 9th? The 9th. Tuesday the 9th, 4 p.m. Pacific. We're going to watch the movie on Twitch, twitch.tv/SpaceCatsPeaceTurtles, which you don't have to remember all those words. We'll also post about it on our social. That's next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. This has been another fun bonus episode where we get by. Ezra is done with vacations next week, and we'll be back to join us, and Hunter will be finished with his tour. I look forward to having them back. But thank you for holding down the fort, Tim. It was great chatting with you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
People can find you on Twitter at Tim Dufresne. Is that your best place? What's your best thing?
I don't do anything. I don't.
Okay, you don't do anything. When your movie comes out, I'll tell everyone to see it.
That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll work on that. And you can find Anthony. Also, he doesn't do much on Twitter, but he's there. Thanks for being here, Anthony.
Hey, this was a lot of fun. I love you guys.
You can pass along any compliments to Tim or Anthony, podcast at read-reap.com. That's where you can send us email, and we will all, I will pass along to anybody because I'm the one who checks the email. All right, we'll be back next week. Goodbye.
Bye.